Hello, hello.
Hi, Mr. Tom.
Anita,
How are you tonight?
I'm okay. How about yourself?
Good.
You
Just
about
sitting underneath the shade tree.
all right. Pretty hot. It's gonna be hot, I guess, all week.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. I'm hoping they'll change it after a couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to be pretty bad, I guess.
Are you flying all week?
I'm on call. I'm on call from 4 in the afternoon until 4 in the morning, Monday through Thursday this week. They kind of left me alone last week. I had to just go sit at the airport for a few hours on Monday, and then that was all I did. So it was pretty nice.
So you're always on an on-call schedule?
Yeah, that's what I've kind of chosen to do for most of my time at UPS is be on call. Um, because historically they've used me about half the time as a pilot who flies a regular line. So it's worked out pretty good. Although they can once they get you out in the system, they can do whatever they want with you, and they usually do. So sometimes you don't know where you're going, what you're doing, and they can drag you all over the place, and sometimes it's pretty tough. But that not being gone quite as much is kind of a trade-off. So yeah, that's what I've chosen to do.
Yeah, I always thought being on call was kind of a pain in the rear end.
Where did you do that at?
I worked at a chemical plant. We worked the 12-hour shifts, and every other shift you had to be on call for like 24 hours or something. So it was just, you know, I started out doing a 7-day swing. I think I like that better than the 12-hour stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I've gotten to the point now where that feeling of never knowing when the phone is going to ring is not very good. But I've gotten to
all
the
right.
point now where I kind of know when they're going to call. Either going to call right at 4 o'clock or at 5. And if they don't call at 4 or 5, they're going to call between 9:30 and 10:30. So kind of figured out
Yeah.
the tricks there.
Yeah, you know when the flights are leaving. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pretty much it. You got
so are they
any
staying pretty busy?
Um, yeah, I mean, the airline's hiring pilots like crazy. Um, we didn't hire for a year, and then all of a sudden, 2 months ago, they started hiring like crazy. So they're hiring 38, 35, 30 guys a month, which is a lot. And it's all because of this,
Yeah.
the mail contract. FedEx dropped their mail contract with the post office, and UPS picked it up. So UPS or FedEx apparently is downsizing quite a bit, so we're picking up what they've left off. Good for the company, but it means I have to work more.
Yeah, I saw where Kellogg's is closing down. A big plant's been open for 75 years out in Iowa, I think it was. And then one of the pork plants was shutting down.
Mm.
It's turning into a big mess.
Yeah, yeah. They're gonna take away all our food at some point. Just give us what they
Yeah.
want to have. Yeah. Hey Bob, how are you?
Doing okay. Not feeling real well, but I'm here.
Yeah, there's a bug going around, I guess, the back to school bug, going around.
Oh, lovely.
Take your elderberry syrup.
Yeah. Hey, Laura,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Are you sick too, or feeling under the weather?
No, I'm doing okay. So hopefully it's not a bug. It might be his nerves. You know, losing his sister hasn't been easy on him.
Yeah. Yeah,
They were
Has he
close.
been, has he been sleeping?
No, not a whole lot. That's one of our issues is trying to sleep here.
All right. Oh yeah, you got the planes.
Yeah,
Tell
we got
Tom stop being so noisy.
yeah. Laura, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but would you be willing to do a recap of the call on Friday that was really a letdown for me. I was really disappointed not to be able to join that, but my signal was just so terrible. But would
I
you
didn't email it out. I did put it in our little text chat in case anybody wanted to watch it.
okay.
I mean, we just talked about the assembly and you know, it was an interview to represent Kentucky. And I was kind of really upset that you didn't get to be on either. The internet connection and it happened to Justin too. So they told
Yeah,
me going in that you know, we could only have 5 people and maybe that's why they only do such a small amount of people.
okay. Yeah, that was
So
a new
everybody got
platform.
shut out.
Um, Todd, Bob, and I all our internet didn't cut out, but Justin and Tom's, yeah, they couldn't stay on the call. It was a little annoying.
Well, I know
And
I
yeah,
started watching it and everybody was on there except for Justin. I didn't know Tom got kicked off. So,
yeah, right in the middle of answering a question too.
uh,
Yeah, that StreamYard app, that was new to me, and I don't know if that had something to do with it. I've never really had that kind of an issue with Zoom or the WebEx, but for some reason, uh, yeah, that wasn't working for me.
Well, I think it went overall pretty good other than that.
Okay.
So hopefully we represented Kentucky well and you know people have something
Yeah.
to see now.
Justin said we nailed it.
Yeah, Justin said we nailed it. He liked it. So
Very good. Good. Um, we'll go ahead and get started. Unless something you'd all like to share before we get started. Can y'all see the Kentucky Assembly symbol?
yes.
yes.
All right, welcome everybody to the Kentucky Jural Assembly meeting for August 25th, 2024. Thanks to everybody for taking the time to be here. And I'll go ahead and read the business decision for us. This meeting is private bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner to eliminate all conflict and false allegations. Is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency or public agency of the federal, state, county, city, or township agencies present? Additionally, are there any U.S. citizens or citizens of the United States present? Anyone who is here under false pretenses? Anyone who is working for any foreign government, including the territory of the United States or municipal United States? Anyone who is being paid or coerced to be here must fully disclose their presence and purpose now or leave the premises. If they subsequently show up as federal witnesses, they are discredited for failure to disclose. Is there any response to the Bivens decision? All right, for tonight, pillar building, and we'll get back into, we're going to finish up chapter 1 of Excellence of the Common Law by Brent Allen Winters. And then I'm going to take a look at about a 4-minute video of Neil Gorsuch that I found very interesting. I was at my parents' house last weekend, and they were watching a video of Neil Gorsuch being interviewed for his book, his new book that's out. And he said some really interesting things in there, so I kind of wanted to share some of that. I thought was pretty neat. Anyway, as far as the pillar building, I don't have a lot to put out with that today, other than I did talk to Justin last week, and he said he's going. I asked him for contacts at other states, other Jural Assembly, either coordinator or chairperson at other states that I could call and have a phone conversation with and try to get some ideas on where we can start putting foundation blocks down to start actually building our pillars. So Justin was going to get with Joe Hayes, who has those contacts through the Federation. And so once I get some of those going, hopefully we can start making a little more progress in that department. Anything else to share as far as pillar building? Any articles you've run across or videos? Share. All right. Excellence of the common law. The last couple of sections here, section 1.7 was I thought a pretty good read as far as it was titled Common Law versus Civil Law, an introductory contrast. And so he kind of goes through and says, well, here's what common law is and here's what civil law is. And it was a pretty good read for this book. I thought it was fairly easy to digest, whereas a lot of his stuff is fairly detailed, but this was easier to put together. He starts off by this section by saying, two contrary traditions of law and government prevail over the earth, the common law and the civil law. And as I was thinking about that, it basically boils down to the way he describes it as good versus evil. Really, you've got the common law, which is good, it's God's law, it's awesome, it's perfect and great, and then you've got everything else, which is anti-scripture, false God type stuff. So that's kind of the way he started the section. It says common law tradition governs only a handful of countries, is consonant with scripture, and acknowledges the eternal and divine source of law, whereas civil law tradition governs most nations and is fundamentally Babylonian, relying on human reason. And once again, it's good versus evil. It's God's law versus Tower of Babel, right? That the tip of that pyramid is where they keep all of their power and their wisdom, and it trickles down what they want to share. Whereas it should be an upside down triangle where the people, or it's we the people, and we go by what the Father has handed down to us, not this man-made Babylonian, as he calls it, government. Common law, all law is derivative. Men must derive law from the God of creation. Under civil law, men are the fountain of law. So under civil law tradition, man has legislated the law that we're living under, Roman civil law. Whereas in common law, we look to the God of Scripture for His law and derive our justice from that. A subsection of this section was titled relationships, and this was an interesting read as well. Talks about different types of relationships that exist between contending parties in common law, and he lists those two. One is fiduciary and a non-fiduciary. So me, of course, I had to go and find out the definition of fiduciary, so I knew exactly what it was talking about. And so on the next slide here, it says fiduciary basically means you're acting in good faith with regard to the interest of another. And on the other side of the coin there, non-fiduciary means each party is looking to his own advantage. So I wanted to kind of discuss this a little bit and see what that looked like. I was trying to think of what a fiduciary case might look like and a non-fiduciary case. And what I basically came up with was, for fiduciary, somebody's working for you. Let's say a contractor or an attorney or whatever. Somebody is trying to do something for you. They're looking out for your best interests. Whereas a non-fiduciary, that there is none of that bridging the gap sort of relationship. It's like, what, this only concerns me and I'm only concerned about this, whereas the other party is, there's no interest of crossing the aisle, so to speak. Right. So, but when we talk about relationships in common law, that's the first question we should ask is, what is the relationship here in this case? Is there a fiduciary tone to it, or are both these parties in this case only seeking their own goodwill and advantage? Does that make sense? Am I kind of describing that in a way that makes sense? So common law focuses on relationships. There's fiduciary and non-fiduciary, whereas civil law focuses on the will of the state, right? That Babylonian, what does the top of the pyramid, what's important to them? Because they've made the laws. And so what is going to make the state happy? Common law says, no, we're going to look at the relationship between the two parties involved and figure out what that relationship looks like. Furthermore, in relationships, it says, in order to fully appreciate the common law, one must first understand and be able to distinguish relationship kinds, because only by discerning relationships will one rightly discern rights. Okay, so we as jurors need to be, one of our focuses needs to be on these relationships. What kind of relationship is this, and where are the rights coming from? And then looking at the law and determining what we're going to do based on that relationship. The common law tradition says that men never make, but rather discover law by first recognizing the duties, different sorts of relationships to man. So, God handed down His law in Scripture, and that's it. We don't come around and He says in Deuteronomy chapter 4, 4:22, I believe, He says, don't add to it and don't take away. So, because His law is perfect. And so men never make, but they rather discover law by looking at the relationship and how the relationship is different and which law is going to apply. since the state deems the law to have emerged from its womb, so since the state, man, has created the law therefore is subject to the state and not the state to the law. Right? And we're all very familiar with how that operates. So different viewpoints of relationships. A government, and this was in a footnote at the bottom of one of the pages that I thought was a great quote. He says, "A government," and this is from Chief Justice Story, and I got a slide on him in a second. But Chief Justice Story said, "A government without relief from a slavery of mind and body, of otherwise unending debt of the unfortunate debtor," says Justice Story, "is incompatible with the first precepts of Christianity and is a living reproach to the nations of Christendom, carrying them back to the worst ages of paganism." So we're talking about relationships, and what has the de facto, the powers that be, what have they managed to put us in? They have managed to put us in this unending debt. We are all unfortunate debtors, pretty much. I mean, that's the system that they've built, and so Justice Story says that's incompatible with Christianity, and goes back to the worst ages of paganism, right? Tower of Babel, Nimrod. I mean, this is our system that we're living in now is pagan. Laura?
So they've been trying to say that I am mental, with withholding our daughter. And I've been looking into the ADA stuff, and there's actually diagnosis. Okay, one of them is LAS, LAS. It's litigation abuse syndrome from our government. And then there is also another diagnosis, and it's called GIFT, and it's governmental inflicted familial trauma. So I just thought that was interesting because, you can't go through court without being, I don't know, traumatized to some point when the courts aren't honest or following Christian views. When you're going in there and you're dealing with all these lies, it feels very pagan. Our government feels pagan to me. And it's hard for me to accept advice from people that can't even tell the truth in court, that are supposed to be professionals. And I'm very good at not lying. I don't do it very often. I can't even remember the last time I lied. So why am I going to a bunch of liars and asking them for help? Can they help me? I've already overcome that. You know what I mean? So I'll just yield with that. Thank you.
That's a great point. What was that second one? I got the last, the litigation abuse syndrome. What was the other one?
It's GIFT, governmental inflicted familial trauma. Hopefully my gift will be, or hopefully my suffering will be a gift, to other people so that they don't have to go through this, because, there's a lot of us joining together to try to do something about CPS.
So GIFT, government inflicted familial trauma, is an actual named disease in their big book of.
I know that the LAS is. Now the gift has just kind of come out from a girl, a doctor in Texas, and they've taken her child, and now they're trying to take her license. So, but the other one's in the book. What there have been that medical book of diagnosis, the LAS.
That's interesting. Litigation abuse. All right, so here's Justice Joseph Story, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, just for a little over a year, from March of 08 to May of 09. And just a little blurb on Wikipedia. It says historians generally agree that Story reshaped American laws much more than Marshall or anyone else in a conservative direction that protected property rights. continuing on with this theme of common law, government includes two related concepts. Officers and magistrates of government are servants to all others, whereas civil law government, the governed are the servants to those that govern, right? That pyramid, that Tower of Babel, right? We serve those at the top, and the will of those that govern is to dominate the governed, right? Which is totally foreign to what we were given. We the people, you know, we the people are at the top of the pyramid, under only the Almighty Father who gave us His law. And so our system, of course, is not only pagan, but it's the opposite of what our founders gave us, right? Which we all are all familiar with that. This was really good blurb and another footnote. It says to further illustrate the law of Rome and the law of Imperial Japan both demanded that the individual devote himself to the emperor and, if need be, die for the emperor. By contrast, the standard of Scripture provides that Christ proved himself worthy of the individual's devotion by dying for the justification of that individual. The record reveals that Christ has done so. It is contrary to Scripture and the common law tradition to entrust one's self and life to any other, for no other has nor is able to merit such loyalty. So the God of Scripture has said, right in Leviticus chapter 25, the children of Israel are servants to me, right, to Him. They are my servants whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. One of the reasons that He brought them out of Egypt, so they didn't have to serve Pharaoh anymore. And He says they're going to be His servant to Him only, right? We can't serve two masters. However, the civil law has basically said that we're going to. They basically forced us into idolatry by giving us another God to serve, right? And so Rome, Japan, are forcing the individual, forcing the sovereign to serve them, right? But Christ died to prove Himself worthy of our devotion. Our devotion is only to Him. Ann Holdaway asked me a question last week about, she's been reading in Jeremiah, and so when the two southern tribes were taken into captivity, God basically said to Jeremiah, I put you in captivity for a reason. Just stay there, right? Don't fight against it. I'm putting you into captivity for your punishment. Just stay there. And so her question was, well, if we've been put into bondage through the IRS and the gold confiscation, the birth certificate scam, if we've been put into this bondage, should we just accept it until there's a jubilee or a release of debt or whatever that looks like? And my thought is, well, we haven't been forcefully been put into captivity by the Father. I don't think we've been swindled, right? We've been deceived into this bondage, and I think there's a big difference. And so when I read this Leviticus 25, and it says that He brought His people out so that His people could serve Him only, that says to me that's the answer, right? We are to not be deceived. Jesus Himself said, "Don't be deceived." Paul said, "Don't be deceived." And so, if we can see the deception, which we all have, and there's a path out, and that's another thing about Leviticus 25. It says if you're able to redeem yourself, then God says you can do that, right? And I think that's the beauty of this American state national system, is that there's a pathway for us to redeem ourselves. There it is. I see the deception. I want out. God says for me to serve Him only, whereas civil law says we're to serve the lawmakers. To me, it's a no-brainer. We've got a pathway to escape. God has given us permission to redeem ourselves, and I think that's the thing to do. Laura?
So, and I've had to make this distinction with my kids and my faith. In Romans, you are told to submit to your governmental authorities because God put them in place. And it also tells you to follow the law of the land. And it's very specific when it says law of the land. And I think a lot of people get really baffled by that verse. And I know my sons have, because they think that the government we have now is the law of the land when it's actually not, so
Yeah.
that's
That's a powerful testimony there. Romans 13:1, I believe, is where Paul says that. I was just texting with Todd Doyle a couple of days ago about that verse. He says, yeah, submit to the authorities that have been put there because God put them there, right? Well, in 1780, who was the authority in our country? I was the king, right? We were the sovereign. There was no authority over us other than the Father, right? So who am I going to submit to? I'm going to submit to myself. In 1780, I'm the authority. I'm the king, right? Because the Treaty of Paris says so. The king says himself, the sovereignty that I had as the king now belongs to the state, to the people. And so Paul's verse there to submit, well, I'm just submitting to my own authority. And who's above me is the Father. Yeah, I've heard people use that verse before, and I'm like, that's the civil law being over us, the government that's supposedly over us is not the accurate picture, right? And we've all seen that. Thanks be to the Father. Finishing up, he says the source of a nation's law will be either the God of Scripture or a false lawgiver. Once again, good and evil, true Messiah, false Messiah. I'm going to serve the common law and what God He chose to give us in 1776, or I'm going to play along with this idolatrous Tower of Babel pagan system that's been usurped and dealt to us. So to me, it's a no-brainer. You can't. I don't think you can have a foot in Egypt and a foot in the wilderness. You either are going to come out of Egypt 100% and serve the God of Scripture, or you have to admit that you're being idolatrous and obeying the civil law. The common law is an oral tradition of witnesses, exact words recorded. The civil law is a written tradition of expert opinion summations. Right, so are we looking to the people? Are we looking to the facts, right? As we've gone through and we've seen with this issue in the Kentucky Assembly, where Bob's trying to get the facts, right? The exact words, what actually happened. Let's put that together and not listen to a group of elected legislative experts, right? That everyone's looking to give us their impress us with their wisdom. So I thought this was a good way to finish up chapter 1 with this compare and contrast. That it's, and like I said, it's basically good versus evil when you really get down to it. So anything to add on at the end of chapter 1? All right, the last thing I wanted to look at was this video, and I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. And see if I can make this happen. All right, so I apologize for it being a Fox News. I'm not a Fox News watcher, but it just so happened when I Google searched Neil Gorsuch talking about sovereignty, and that's why I wanted to show this video. Is he does some pretty interesting things, and I'll preface it by saying that I've watched two fairly short interviews of his. Like I said, he's selling a book, so he's been all over the place. But in both places, he says that we, the people, are sovereign. And I thought, coming from a Supreme Court justice's mouth, that was very interesting. I was very interested by him saying that. And some of the other things he says kind of leads me to believe that he's talking about common law and self-government, but he just can't come out and say that. I realize that the position that he's in, he knows better than to just come out and say it. So I think he's using veiled speech to give a message. And I think at some point I might try to get his book and see exactly what he's trying to say. But this is about 4 minutes, and I just wanted to play it and see what y'all think.
Fourth branch of government.
Can y'all hear
A
it?
couple things you have from the book. You say many criminal laws are not the direct product of elected representatives accountable to us, the handiwork of agency officials. You go on to say these days federal agencies don't just write and enforce legally binding rules. Often they act as prosecutor and judge too.
The IRS has 100 questions. I mean, you don't want to become a federal felon, right? On your own. So you call them. You call them. And it turns out for a period of time, they were giving wrong answers about a third of the time. And then when asked, how come so many wrong answers? They said, well, the IRS code's just gotten so complex. And there's so many new laws. There's been an explosion in our laws, and it's new, and it's different, and it's in our lifetimes.
You say too that there are reasons that have driven us to this, some of them big societal changes. You say when trust in individual judgment, civic institutions, and social norms fades, where else is there to look for answers but the law?
You know, when Alexis de Tocqueville came to this country in the 1830s, he said that unlike Europe, where anything important was undertaken by a British lord or a French government, here it was ordinary Americans coming together in their communities and making a difference. And those connections, those bonds are essential for democracy, right? I have to trust you. You have to trust me. We may disagree. That's the whole point of democracy, is we vote, right? That's the engine of democracy, is disagreement. But when we lose our trust in one another, when we lose our trust in ourselves and our own judgment, where do we turn? We turn to the state, we turn to laws, we turn sometimes to people very distant from our own homes, right? Federalism gives way to nationalism. And instead of nationalism being our laws made in Congress, it's often moved over to agencies with less responsiveness to the American people.
But the book does talk about, balance of power. There are different branches. They have different assignments. So how does an independent judiciary operate within some conflicts between the branches?
The answer is the Constitution. And if it's in the Constitution and the other two branches are infringing on it, your right to exercise your religion, your right to bear arms, your right to speak freely, I'm duty bound. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution, and you win, even though the government may not like it. When do I stay out? When the Constitution doesn't say anything about the subject. That's left for we, the people, to decide in their democratic processes. And that's most things in our daily lives, isn't it?
Well, you also talk about the issue of individualism, which is very American. It's very big in this country, and how some of that may be sacrificed in giving over to this overregulation.
We're about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And you look at the promises in the Declaration, and they're so profound, right? We are all created equal. We have inalienable rights. They don't come from government. They belong to each of us. And government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. We are the sovereign in this country, we the people. Those are profound promises. And we all want those promises to be realized more and more over time. And the questions I'm asking through the book, really through the stories of the people to whom it's dedicated, how are we doing? That's kind of our report card, that those three promises in the Declaration. How are we scoring today? That's what it's about.
So how do we solve the problems in the book?
Well, first of all, we have to learn how to trust one another, right? Not everything needs to be solved by a distant government. Sometimes we should remember what Tocqueville talked about, working with one another. That means listening as well as speaking. That means learning how to lose as well as win. That means trusting the person with whom you disagree loves this country every bit as much as you do. And my good friend Steve Breyer says, if I listen to almost anyone talk for long enough, I'm going to find something they say that we can agree on. And maybe we should start there.
Well, the book is a collection of fascinating, somewhat infuriating stories that I think of real people, that we should all know their stories, and that it should spark a conversation about where we go from here. So best wishes with the book, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shannon.
You all able to hear and see that?
Yes.
I'm a doctor, and my passion is to
Oh,
alleviate
sorry.
arthritis pain using nothing but natural methods. Can you guess the top 3 foods that I would recommend you to eat?
So, what did y'all think? Anything sparked your interest from anything that he said?
Well, I think half of it was right, but when they start talking about a democracy, it just curls my stomach
Yeah.
because it's supposed to be a republic. It just infuriates me when they start talking about democracies.
100% with you, Anita. I was like, he's saying all the right things, but then he threw out democracy. I was like, oh, why is he using that word? But yeah.
All right. Because how are you going to correct it if you're still thinking about democracies?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was interesting how he talked about an explosion in laws, right? We just talked today about the civil law and all the problems that is presented when the only thing we're supposed to do in common law is look at what's already been given to us by the Father. He said he was talking about ordinary Americans and communities and trusting each other. I mean, he's talking about relationships, right? This common law stuff. Like we talked about today, the trust and relationship, individualism. I kind of heard him saying self-government. I think that was Shannon's term, individualism. But then he says, we are the sovereign, and that's really what piqued my interest when I listened to a different interview recently where he said that. So I would probably wager that he's probably using that phrase in all of his interviews that he's doing for his book, saying that we are the sovereign. So here you have somebody working for the de facto Supreme Court for the United States, talking about things that we're trying to do, that we're trying to bring up the common law, that we're trying to self-govern. And so once again, I kind of had this thought that maybe he's using veiled speech to tell us something that he knows he can't just come out and say, or he'll lose his job at the least, right? And then the last thing he talked about was trusting a distant government. He said not everything can be solved by a distant government. And once again, what my ears hear is you've got to get government going in your town, at your county, right? Start building your own government. Don't worry about the usurpers in DC to solve this problem. Get going on your county and local government. So I just thought it was interesting. I don't know anything about Justice Gorsuch. Didn't know anything about his background. So, but I thought it was all very, very compelling and interesting to hear that, some of those things. So I just wanted to share. Put it on your radar possibly. But I'll go back to.
Yeah, they always seem to get half of it right. I just wish they'd go all the way.
Yeah.
It's just like they're dangling a carrot in front of you or something. So it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah, I think I might read his book just to kind of see what he's really trying to say. Anyway, one thing I want to discuss, since we have a little bit of time, and maybe this isn't the right forum, but and if it's not, just tell me and I can wait for another time. But I read across an email from Justin concerning the Michigan stuff. Are y'all familiar with Michigan Assembly and them being shut down, and a lot of the allegations by Michigan against Anna?
I
I don't
just
know
heard that they
about
were
that.
having a conflict.
I know Anna has written some articles about the CIA and them coming, like, without particularly mentioning Michigan or what they're going through, but I know that was part of the problem there. Their coordinator was ex-CIA and he came in and was trying to run it like the CIA. That's my take on it. I yield. Thank you.
Because the email that Justin had sent to me included a link to a lot of articles and things that were really kind of unsettling for me to look at, and I just didn't know how much truth any of it had. But maybe it's worth a phone call to Justin to kind of track some of that stuff down. Anything else y'all want to discuss?
Yes. Starting, I believe, Tuesday, September 3rd, the Arkansas Jural Assembly is inviting outsiders and they do have their courts up. I think I've sent you that link. I know I've sent
Yeah.
it to Justin and some others, but I really think it would be good if we could attend, that meeting, since there's kind of something to go by example since they're already set up.
I think that's a fantastic thing, and I'm gonna plan to be there. That's exactly.
Are we
what-
not having a meeting at night?
But we have a meeting this Tuesday, and I'm gonna try to go bi-weekly on the second and the last Tuesday of the month.
Okay, so
So
we'll be
if we
open
do,
at night.
yeah, we'd be open on the first Tuesday.
Okay.
So what we have what's our meeting Tuesday?
Tuesday is our General Assembly meeting.
And is militia this week as well?
Yes. We may not be at the militia meeting because Bob's sister's funeral is Thursday. We have a lot of family coming in from Arkansas. So, but we do plan on being at the military day on Saturday because everybody's supposed to be leaving Saturday. So it's kind of working out good. I hope it continues to work out. I really don't want to miss our militia day.
Are you gonna lead the General Assembly meeting on Tuesday, Laura? Is that your plan?
Yes, I don't have an agenda. I guess I need to get with Belinda with that. I know with Cynthia having the heart surgery, she declined our interview on Friday and she didn't make it to our Tuesday meeting this week because, she's home from the hospital now. She said the little girl was jumping on her mama. So it was like a full-time job.
Okay. All right, so September 3rd is on the calendar. Good. General Assembly Tuesday, militia Wednesday. So we got a lot coming up. But thanks for everybody for being here. I'm gonna get a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Hope you feel better, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, Bob, we'll be praying for you. Our next meeting will be in 2 weeks, 5:30.
Brenda's birthday.
Who's?
My cousin Brenda's birthday. And then my uncle's is the 9th of September. He lives across the street. And then mine is September 19th.
All right, a lot of birthdays.
All right, y'all have a good night.
Thanks y'all for being here.
You too. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Y'all too. Thank you. Good night.